Have you ever wondered why some countries are just so incredibly wealthy while others seem permanently stuck in poverty? It's honestly one of the biggest, most important questions out there. Today, we're going to unpack the really powerful argument from the book Why Nations Fail to find out what's really going on. All right, to get started, let's look at a puzzle that frames this whole thing perfectly. It's a tale of two cities. Or, well, really one city, just split right down the middle. So check this out. On the left, you've got Nogales, Arizona in the U.S. The average household income is about $30,000 a year. Most kids graduate high school, people live long lives, and you can count on things like electricity, sanitation, and law and order. Then you look to the right, Nogales, Sonora in Mexico. Literally just a fence separates them, but it is a completely different world. Incomes are just a fraction of what they are in the north. Many adults don't have a high school degree, life expectancy is lower, and crime is a major problem. So what gives? We're talking about the same people, the same climate, pretty much the same culture, separated by nothing more than a border fence. How can that single line on a map explain such a massive gap in well-being? That's the core mystery we're here to solve. Now, before we get to the big answer, we kind of need to clear the air. There are three super common theories people throw around to explain all this, and, well, they just don't hold up. First up is the geography hypothesis, the idea that tropical countries are just naturally poor. But history kind of throws a wrench in that. Think about it. Before Columbus arrived, the wealthiest, most advanced civilizations in the Americas were the Aztecs and the Incas. The geography hasn't changed, but today those regions are much poorer than North America. That's a complete reversal of fortune. So, nope, it can't just be geography. Okay, so what about culture? The idea that some cultures are just harder working or more innovative? Well, for that, just look at the Korean Peninsula. For centuries, North and South Korea shared the exact same culture, language, and history. But after they split, one became an economic powerhouse and the other became an impoverished state plagued by famine. Culture alone just can't explain that kind of radical divergence. So the third theory is the ignorance hypothesis, that leaders in poor countries just don't know how to make their country rich. But, that doesn't really track when you look closer. Often, these leaders know exactly what they're doing. Policies that create poverty for the masses can be incredible politics for a small group of elites, helping them get rich and stay in power. They're not getting it wrong by mistake. They're getting it wrong on purpose. So if it's not geography, it's not culture, and it's not ignorance, what in the world is left? The answer, according to Why Nations Fail, boils down to one incredibly powerful concept: institutions. And what are institutions? Well, think of them as the rules of the game. They're the rules that we all live by in a society. You've got political rules that decide who gets power and how they use it. And you've got economic rules that decide how people can earn a living, start a business, and own property. These rules shape everything. The authors argue that there are really only two types of institutions. On one side, you have inclusive institutions. They protect your property, have a fair legal system, and provide public services that create a level playing field. They encourage everyone to participate, to innovate, to invest. Then you have extractive institutions. These are designed for one thing: to allow a small elite to extract wealth and resources from everybody else. They put up barriers to stop new people from succeeding, and they concentrate all the power at the top. For a perfect real-world example, let's look at two famous billionaires, Bill Gates and Carlos Slim. Bill Gates built Microsoft through innovation, but he did it within an inclusive American system, a system that was powerful enough to hit him with antitrust laws to ensure competition. Carlos Slim, on the other hand, built a huge part of his fortune by acquiring Mexico's state-owned telephone company through his political connections. It became a near monopoly. It's the same basic drive for wealth, but they were playing under completely different sets of rules. And this brings us right back to Korea, which is like the perfect modern-day experiment. After the split, South Korea slowly built more inclusive institutions, and its economy just exploded. North Korea, meanwhile, went all in on the most brutally extractive institutions you can imagine, and its economy completely collapsed. Same people, same culture, same starting point. The difference is the institution. But here's the thing. These institutions don't just exist in a vacuum. They create these incredibly powerful feedback loops, virtuous circles and vicious circles. that can lock a country into a path for centuries. To understand these loops, you have to get this one key idea: creative destruction. See, economic growth isn't just about making more of the same stuff. It's about new technologies and new ideas destroying the old ones. A new invention can make an entire industry obsolete. A new company can put established ones out of business. It's a messy, disruptive, and kind of scary process. And that fear of disruption is exactly why elites and extractive systems hate progress. Here's a great story. Back in the 16th century, an inventor showed Queen Elizabeth I a brand new knitting machine that could revolutionize the textile industry. And she said no. Why? She was terrified that it would put thousands of traditional hand knitters out of work, which could lead to riots and threaten her hold on power. She feared the creative destruction. But sometimes, history pushes things in the other direction, creating a virtuous circle. Take England. The Black Death in the 1300s wiped out so many people that it made labor much more valuable and weakened the old feudal lords. Over time, this led to political changes, like the Glorious Revolution of 1688, which gave more power to Parliament and less to the king. Those more inclusive political institutions then paved the way for the Industrial Revolution. Each step reinforced the next, creating this unstoppable momentum toward prosperity. But for every virtuous circle, there's a vicious one. The book calls this the iron law of oligarchy, and it's a tragic pattern we see all over the world. Step 1. You have an extractive regime in power. Step 2. A new group comes along, promising freedom and change, and overthrows them. But then comes Step 3. Instead of changing the system, the new leaders just take over the same extractive institutions and use them to enrich themselves. The cycle of poverty and oppression just starts all over again with a new set of faces at the top. So, after all that, what's the big takeaway here? What does this powerful theory mean for how we should look at the world today? It all comes down to this really powerful, almost chilling final thought. Poor countries are poor because those who have power make choices that create poverty. They aren't getting it wrong because they're ignorant or made a mistake. They're getting it wrong on purpose. The poverty of nations isn't an accident. It's not inevitable. It's the direct result of a political struggle over the rules of the game, a struggle that for most of history and in most of the world has been won by the few at the expense of the many. And that is why nations fail.